This is episode 84 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Meet Jointly. Across the country, there are small businesses just starting to scale, get distribution, and launch into national retailers. They all share one really big challenge: reaching new customers and growing their brand on a shoestring budget. Meet Jointly is a platform that connects growing brands with the influencers who are ready to share their product and stories with their engaged audience. Today, I'd like to welcome Nick Laperle, CEO and founder of EERS Global Technologies, Inc. Nick is a 20-year veteran in hearing health, following in the footsteps of his family, who over a 40-year period pioneered hearing health clinics across Quebec. His goal is to eradicate the world's most prevalent occupational disease, hearing loss caused by noise. In 2014, Nick founded EERS, a company dedicated to the protection of workers' hearing safety and well-being. In partnership with ÉTS University, he has led a team that developed a wearable bionic ear and platform called SonX for the connected, protected worker of the future. Protected by more than 43 patents, SonX won first place at the U.S. Department of Labor's prestigious Noise Safety Challenge. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's really interesting. How did you get involved in the Noise Safety Challenge?
It's the first time in ever that the U.S. Department of Labor launches a technology competition to address this number one occupational disease, which is noise-induced hearing loss. So, when the press release went out, it was an initiative by a woman called Kelly Schnaps, who really took this on, convinced the U.S. Department of Labor that they should do this. And I saw the press release, and of course, being in the industry for 20 years, everybody forwarded me the press release.
Right, they're like, "Go do it."
So we applied. Yeah, you got to do this. You got to do this. And I'm like, it's not possible that the U.S. government is doing this. And so we applied. 40 companies were selected, and 10 were invited to Washington to pitch sort of a Shark Tank style in front of all the different U.S. governments. And we won.
That's awesome. How have you leveraged that? Like, I'm sure that's really a great honor and credential as a startup. When you won, was there anything you could do to help leverage that?
One of their divisions, which is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which is part of the CDC, so Centers for Disease Control. Given that this is an occupational disease, they're involved, and they sent out a blog to 40,000, companies around the U.S. And then we got inloads of offers, and we chose our launch customers, which in any business, a launch customer is really critical. Find the right customer who understands the value proposition of what you're bringing to the table, but is also going to give you some leniency as to, you're not a Fortune 500, you're a startup, right. And, you will overstate what you can do because that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. So for us, it was fantastic. It gave us our first customers.
That's really fantastic. How long has EERS been in business?
So in this version of the company, we had a previous version in this space, which some of them we exited to some major corporations in the space. And then we restarted this new company in 2014.
Okay. So a few years now. What has, I think a lot of listeners, particularly entrepreneurs in other startups, they'd probably love to hear about the go-to-market strategy. Did you always know that you'd work, well, I guess tell us about the go-to-market strategy.
Yeah. If for sure, go-to-market strategy is a very, very important. So for us, in the previous companies, so I've been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, and sometimes you go too fast, and that's a reality. So you go too fast, you take on too big of a market. So what we've done in this time is we've chosen our launch customers carefully, like very, very carefully.
Yeah.
And then we slowly did a soft launch where we introduced the product to them. and the first, what we call the MVP, the minimum viable product. So what's the minimum that you can bring to the customer where they're ready to understand the value and they're ready to pay for it, right? Because I mean, free trials are great at the beginning, and of course, this is dependent, what you're bringing to market. For us, it's a hardware software platform. If it's pure software, it's different, and every market is different. For us, it was to introduce the MVP to our customer base, and then gauge the reaction and try to get our first sale for 10 units, 10 workers protected. And then from there, scale that to an account where we know that we can go from 10 to 50 to 500 to 1,000. So when we started with the engagement with the customer, instead of running around trying to get everything to get validation, because as entrepreneurs, there's always a certain amount of insecurity. Did I get it right? Is the price right? Is the product right? So this allows you to get that confirmation from a paying customer. Very, very powerful. So that's how we've introduced the product, and frankly, we're still in that phase. We're more advanced now. We're targeting at about 100 customers, and from there we'll scale in 2019.
I think that is so interesting, and I'm glad you shared that, because I do think that in the space you're in, you could almost scale too quickly too, because the marketplace is large. And I really appreciate you sharing, how you are getting that feedback and making sure that you can handle that scale. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
It's the waking up every day without everything being defined, with believing that you have a certain level of influence of how the day is going to go, Of course, we don't control everything, and being able to be open, to be open to what's going to happen during the day is a big part of it. Not be constricted and this absolutely has to happen by this time, because frankly, there's not a lot that we control. I love that aspect. I love that aspect the most.
Yeah. What can you think of maybe a rookie mistake you made early in your career that we could all learn from?
Absolutely. I was in a meeting with a big potential partner yesterday, and they actually brought that up, and like, so what went wrong? That you had all this amazing technology. And I think when you have ambition, sometimes you have, more ambition than you have resources to execute on.
Yeah.
You often say it's all about execution, right? So if you're trying to fund your business, people will say ideas are a dime a dozen. It's about execution. So execution is, you have to be able to do the things that you said you were going to do on the time frame and for the cost that you're going to say. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, all day long, and the reason you go to business is because you tell yourself, I can change the world, I can make this happen. And we don't put these restrictions on ourselves that say the big corporations will do. Corporations don't launch products without years of study. So that's one way to do it. Entrepreneurs, we do it a little bit differently. But for sure, for me, is like, look, understand the team I have, what's possible, push that a little bit, to the edge, because of course we're always pushing, but not go too fast and try to take on too much.
Right. That's a really great piece of advice. Where are you finding like your inspiration or go-to resources? Do you get inspired by TED Talks, or are there books that you really love? Like, what do you find in your world?
TED Talks for sure. A few years ago, I was at the TED Global in Rio, and that was an amazing experience.
I
just
bet
to
it
be
was.
there in the audience. It was crazy. I mean, by tell you, it starts. There's 100 speakers. By Wednesday afternoon at 2:00, I was in the audience and I was listening, and I couldn't comprehend. Like, I was completely full. So much content, and I went to bed. I went to bed at 2:30 in the afternoon. Woke up at 8.
How many days
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that? 100
So
speakers.
it's a 5-day
Wow,
conference.
that's a
So yeah,
lot.
you get there Sunday. Yeah, by
And
Friday afternoon, you're just
yeah, what I find with those TED Talks too is that it's not just 100 regular old speakers, but it's 100 speakers sort of pushing the boundary and introducing some new lens or some new idea.
exactly.
So that's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
And that
It's a
event's
lot.
pretty exclusive, right? Is it invitation only? Or is it you
Yeah,
just
it's so I got lucky. I had a friend who was very, very connected and has been one of the fellows. So he was able to get me in.
mm,
That's the TED Global Conference. So there's the TED Conference, which is in Vancouver, Canada.
okay.
That's really hard to get in. But if you change the world or send rockets into space, there's
Yeah.
always room for the top.
Right.
And then the TED Global is a little bit easier. And then,
Mm,
what I encourage everybody is to get involved with the TEDx, which
yeah,
are in every municipality, or there's so many events. That's really, really worth it.
those
And
are
I
really
would say the other thing is I work with a life coach from an organization called Uplifted Life,
mm,
and it's all about this openness and connectivity and you know being open, not constricted, and that's helped a lot.
yeah, that's really awesome. As we wrap up, I'd love to know, as a thought leader, what's on your radar right now that you think we'll all be talking about in a year from now as sort of a hot topic or a trend? Like what are you seeing happening?
In our industry, we're seeing artificial intelligence,
Mm,
and so the two things that I've seen coming down is IoT, which is our device is an Internet of Things. It's a connected device,
right.
which produces information to the worker, for personal feedback to his employer. And how is this whole workforce connected to the worker of the future? So nobody really yet understands IoT. Sensors on machines in industry have been everywhere, for years. So
Right.
it's a bit of a buzzword, IoT. So now we're trying to, like, what's the adoption cycle really going to be? Is it going to take 2 years? Is it going to take 5 years? What if it takes 7 years? It's a completely different game plan. And AI, we're hearing all about it. I think it's important to understand, what does AI mean to your business, to your industry. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah, no, those are really great points with where things are going with
Mhm.
technology. And I think that's really fascinating. So thanks for sharing that. Nick, I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.